There we go. Another SEO dojo training. Yeah, I guess we're having another hangout. It's a Friday. As usual, not a lot prepared, but, we'll find a way to fill up the next hour and a half or so somehow. I guess we can start with some introductions. Kevin?
Afternoon, Terry. This is Kevin Dory. I'm the SEO at Dealer On, do automotive SEO. It's been a good week. Unfortunately, getting into some hiring situations. So I've been doing more red tape and less SEO lately. That's me.
Okay, and Tim?
Tim Calling, a Servant's Heart Web Design and Marketing. Let's see. I don't think anything startling is going on. Built another site for a client, a replacement site for them, and just making money for people or helping them make money. That's what I do.
That's what it's about.
Yep.
And Doc?
Doc Sheldon, Intrinsic Value SEO and Search News Central. And I do technical SEO, and the last couple of weeks I've got a pro doing my technical SEO for me, still trying to clean up those 11 hacked sites, moving right along. I actually got a notice this morning from my host that they think there might be malware on one of my domains. So I'll repeat my sentiment from last week. Bite me, Sukuri.
Is that SiteGround where they all are?
Yes, and apparently, we haven't determined the exact entry point, but apparently they got in through one of my sites, and then from there managed to infect them all, and it's all a bunch of script injection of redirect scripts. And I don't know if there are other sites on our server that have also been infected or not, but I know that SiteGround uses Sukuri, and this is at least a 2-year-old exploit. I've always thought Sukuri was supposed to be pretty good, but they're not finding it until SiteGround notices that there's a hell of a lot of activity, and I'm going over limits because of these redirects that hit every second. They redirects again, so it just floods my server, and then they notice it, and they look and they see they've got malware, but Sukuri is not finding it. So, and we even ran the site that we had cleaned up, ran Sukuri on it, and it said it was clean before we ever got it cleaned up. It said there was nothing there. So I'm totally unimpressed with Sukuri right now.
That's an interesting topic. We could actually, I've got a little incident this last week that we could talk about too, after we finish introductions, which I guess is Terry.
Yeah, we'll finish with me. I like Doc. Didn't have a hack, had one blow up when I tried to update a 6-year-old framework. Didn't quite work, and the rollback didn't work, so they got an overdue site redesign and redevelopment. So that's good for everybody, including me.
Yeah.
And that's about it. One thing I will say, not familiar with security, really familiar with WordFence. And although it sends far too many heads up messages from it, like if I even log in, I get an email saying, hey, somebody logged in using the admin user. Well, that's me, so I already know that, thanks. But other than those cryptic messages from WordFence, I think it worked pretty good.
This last week, 2 things happened in my little world regarding security that were interesting. One is not long ago I switched to using Blog Vault as a secondary backup for my sites. My sites are almost all hosted at WP Engine, which has really great backup tools, but I like having a secondary backup. And I chose Blog Vault finally because they're just so good. But they offer a security service that I don't pay for, but they're trying to get me to. And this last week they emailed me and said, there's a file on one of your installs it's in the root, and it's called error.php, and it's malware. You should remove it. And I had never gotten any notice from WP Engine, which has their own security, which is usually excellent. I think it is. But I thought I'd bring that up here. It sounds like it might be a leftover from an exploit on this client site before I took it over and migrated it to WP Engine, started managing it for them. Is that something you guys have ever heard of? A file called error.php being a malware problem? I removed it after making a copy of it, and the site didn't behave any differently. So
it just the name of it would sound like it might be something part of the core that's supposed to, if an error takes place, this is the message that it will be popped up. But that's just supposition. I've never heard of the file.
I opened it in Sublime, my text editor, and it's just a bunch of random text, which probably means it's a binary file that it was trying to interpret. But yeah, just wondered about that. It didn't do any harm. I'm still not going to buy extra added security services from BlogVault. But I thought it was interesting. The other thing that happened. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I thought you were done.
Well, actually, what I will say, one more thing about security. It had a really good reputation, and probably deservedly so. And then it was sold to GoDaddy about a year ago.
Enough said.
Now put anything in the shitter real quick.
I like GoDaddy for domain registration management. I use it for that. It's not as cheap as some, but it's not bad. I have enough domains registered there that I get a break. But for hosting or any other services, no, thank you.
Their customer service policy is non-existent.
Well, actually, I get pretty good help if I've got a domain registration issue, and I have to ask about it.
Well, that is basically, Tim, that they run that as a separate company.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Separate management, separate policy structure, everything. So
I totally get that.
Might as well be going to Moniker. You can't compare their hosting service. Supposedly, one of the problems that I saw from a tech that I think pretty highly of, GoDaddy servers, they run them at about 12% higher saturation level than is recommended for a hosting service, for shared hosting.
Yep.
That man, when you're talking about running at 82 to 85% versus 70 to 73% loaded, that's a big jump.
So I just, I completely understand and agree with you. I've tried their managed WordPress hosting. It was bad. And I just, the other day, migrated a new client off of them and onto an install at WP Engine. It's really sad. I mean, they take products that used to be good and they buy them and then they just let them wither, it seems like. This is apart from hosting even.
That seems to be the going method these days. EIG, Enterprise Insurance Group, has done the same thing with all the dozens and dozens of hosting companies that they've bought up.
The only one of their hosting companies I still use just for personal stuff is HostGator, and only because with HostGator, you get as one of the free installables under Soft Delicious or something. They have a legitimate list serve that's free. And so my personal website, calling.com, is there. And I've got a couple of listservs that I have set up, like for a couple of professional groups I'm part of, or there's one I did for my church, because listservs really still work for the right kind of circumstances. And otherwise, they're not free. They're expensive now. So.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting security-wise, I'll just mention, I found a plugin recently that I really liked at first. It was called WP File Manager. And I installed it on a couple of sites, and it's pretty slick. It's like a little file manager, just like you'd see in cPanel or something. However, then I got a friendly little email from WP Engine saying, "We noticed that you've installed this." It came about 12 hours after I installed it. And you may want to know that you need to upgrade to the new version that just came out because there's malware in the old one. So you never know these days. It had glowing reviews. I took it off the two sites I had put it on. Anyway.
Yeah, if it's in the old version, I don't think I'd want to take a chance on the new version. How long will it stay clean? Yeah.
It was me being lazy. I didn't want to have to break out FileZilla to get to the files or something. I don't know.
And that kind of relates to the discussion this morning in Dojo Facebook group about the web development group about going back to old school web development over WordPress. As everybody here knows, I've been a big proponent
Yes, you have.
for a long time. Mainly because I feel that the control I have with it improves the SEO, and removing all the crap improves the SEO, gives Google less confusing stuff to look at. Who really needs 1,800 lines of CSS in their code because the programmer who did it can't make it work with the theme unless he doesn't. Have not seen a theme yet that doesn't have that nonsense.
No, I agree. It's very, if I could add, I don't have much by way of the design aspect, but I think it's similar to all of our beefs about tools and stuff. It gives you a crutch. It's like, okay, well, there's something to be said about, like, I want to design a web page. Okay, cool. Go to Wix. Just kidding. But like do those things. But I think too many people have that. You could be a WordPress expert, and those people know their stuff because they can go in and remove the fluff. And ultimately what it turns out to be is WordPress is your backbone, and then you move everything out of the way and you can't even really see it anymore. But I think most of the people don't do that. I think 99% of the people go, well, I want to use this, but then I don't want to take the time to understand what it's doing or what it's doing wrong. So I'm 100% in agreement with you from that standpoint of traditional web development. I think would make the results and would make the quote unquote internet a much better place, because people would be doing things that would be helpful to the engines and the users.
Well, I think the vast majority,
a lot faster too.
I think the vast majority of WordPress users are using it right out of the box, piling 54 plugins onto it, and living with that 18-second page load on their homepage, and probably only getting 112 visits a month anyway, so they don't really feel it. It out of the box, most themes are crap, most plugins are crap, and until very recently, when they came out with, for instance, the 2017 house theme, I thought was a major improvement over anything they'd ever done for their house themes. It's fantastic, and it's lean and mean. Even with all of the extra functions in it, it's really a nice compact theme. But out of the box, WordPress platform itself is bloaty, because you have all these options that you can. It's like you're talking about massive CSS files. If you have, I go to Divi, for instance. Divi has all these little modules that you can add all these little plugin, these little features to. So all of those features have to be available. Well, then they download a separate CSS file for each type of module, which is basically a copy paste of that same file for all of the other modules. So now you've got a 2.5 meg CSS file in 16 sections, when it could just be called once, and it can be fixed fairly easily. But out of the box, it's a mess of spaghetti.
Okay, I took a WordPress theme that was over 2,000 lines, put it all on Bootstrap. It looked exactly the same, and it was just over 400 lines of code.
Yep.
Okay, now then I added another 300 lines of code roughly to put in, so that each image, I put 4 images so that no matter what device you have, the image that you're downloading and using is the proper size for that device.
Mm-hmm. That's the way.
That's the way it should be programmed. You don't have to just do that on WordPress. WordPress, as far as responsive design goes, is a joke. It's a joke. It's responsive only in that it will decrease and increase. But go to a mobile and look how long it takes that same web page that downloads like a cracker on desktop. See how long it takes to download on a mobile.
Well, the problem is that, and I haven't looked at it recently, but a couple of versions ago, I looked at WordPress code quite a bit, and basically how it was handling images, it was scaling them on the fly. So you could upload one engine, and it would scale it down to a thumbnail, scale it down to a 150 by 300 or whatever, but it was still downloading the whole damn image. Now,
Yeah.
there was a lot of discussion about that it was crap, and they may have fixed it by now. But
none of them do. Everything you get that has above the post that big picture that's like 900 by 500, when you go to a cell phone, 9 times out of 10, it's just on the fly changing that 900 to 300 to fit on the.
Yeah, see, that's not what jQuery is for, or I'm sorry, media queries. That's not for scaling. The way that you're talking about, upload those 3 or 4 different images for the sizes that are going to be displayed. That's the proper way to do it, and that's the way to do it fast.
But it turns something that's very simple on WordPress into something that takes actual programming and a little bit to do. And a little bit of this is in short supply, in my opinion.
Hair? Yeah. No. I can say that. I can say
I'm the only guy. I'm the only one here with a full head of hair.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, of course, you know what happens to it. It migrates to your ears, your back.
It has my ass, my nose. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I find myself here in the minority, but for a good reason. So now my sites, I will say, for most of my clients, are relatively simple informational sites. There's a few that are transactional, but every site that I manage for clients will load in less than 2 seconds. I can build them very efficiently using all the tools that are available to me with WordPress. And could I do the coding that you're talking about? Oh, yeah. But do I want to, or would I rather build websites faster? Yeah. So
not really. Sorry.
This goes back to this. Well, so you know what, Terry? I love you, man, and we can still agree. Okay, I mean, agree to disagree.
Okay.
In terms of utility, now practicality. So, I admire that you do it the way that you do it. I admire your skill. I'm not denigrating it at all. I can just say, for me, anyway, it's faster to do it, more efficient to do it the way that I do it. The result is still good for the clients.
Here's the point I want to make, right? If you think I recode every page, you're wrong. I have one file, and it's the head. You know why? Because the mast on 90% of all sites is exactly the same. Absolutely. With the nav bar and all that stuff. So that's one file. I open up, I change the CSS in the header, and the whole first part of the site is done, right? All my forms, 3 clicks, everything, including the programming to process it in place. You know what it is, Tim? It's 90% organization.
Well, that I accept. It probably is. I guess what works for me works for me. And
yeah, hey, and you know what? If that works for you, keep doing it. I'm just saying it doesn't really work for me.
I think, Tim, maybe if I could cut you off for a second, I think one of the things that works for you is scale. Like for our clients, all of our WordPress installations are for blogs. I mean, that's what they should, that's perfect for what they should be in my mind. And it's a scale factor. And I think that's where we're not saying that you should do one or the other. Sometimes it makes more sense in a business application. Like I couldn't hire the web developers to put out that at scale the way that I can with a WordPress installation. But I could understand where some other aspects I feel like you know enough. See, I look at it like, Tim, you know what WordPress can do and what it can do or what it can't do, and so on and so forth, enough to execute it correctly. I'm more laying it at the people that don't have any idea what they're doing, and they just put the websites out, and then they're doing it at scale and affecting clients, and they don't know what they're doing, and they could fix that if they did that with a traditional web developer.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I see a lot of that coming in the door as prospective new clients. There's an old joke that has some element of truth to it. It says that sometimes the difference between the pro and the amateur is that the pro knows when something is not worth doing perfectly. Maybe that's me. I don't know. I mean, not saying I'm more pro than anybody else, but it's just
No, I think it works. It's not. I don't stand here in judgment of one way or the other. I just think if it works for you and you're able to do it, I'm judging the ones who aren't on here, the ones who are just like you knock your head and it's like, oh, well, or my clients who get on there and go, well, we have WordPress. Why can't? Well, how many plugins do you have? 64. Okay, I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, I'm sorry, there are 4 pages of plugins.
Well, and
oh,
to be
Lord.
fair, all of this stuff really kind of probably points out why in my years in commercial software, I ended up becoming a manager, not an individual contributor.
That's
So
the
there you
difference.
go. I'm in the Dilbert cartoons, if you remember those. I'm the pointy-headed manager, probably.
The pointy-haired manager, yeah.
Yeah.
Even worse, I was a program manager. I was a program manager. I didn't even get to control the individual assets, the individual contributors. They were all parts of engineering teams that I was supposed to be somehow herding like cats through a product release. And it wasn't pretty, trust me.
Oh.
Anyway, hey, I am interested actually in talking about something I mentioned in the green room. So with the latest algorithm release, or last couple, I think, in fact, there's apparently some new emphasis in the way that they're evaluating and ranking, or at least relatively weighting sites with respect to what they call the expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness of either. Well, so this is interesting. The sites and/or really the people that are the authors of the content on the sites, and it's a little bit murky, I think, and to me anyway, whether, for instance, a site can really have expertise, or if it's the authors that do. And I'm not sure that EAT, the initial for those 3 things, applies equally to authors and the sites. But nonetheless, I'm finding that some of my sites, a couple of them, have begun to fall off a little bit. And I think it's because we've been attributing the authorship for the content we produce to people that don't have clinical backgrounds, but rather marketing backgrounds.
Can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely, please.
Do you have author bylines, author bios at the bottom of the articles, and links to an author bio?
We do when we're doing blog posts, first of all, but almost all the content we produce these days are new pages for the site, not blog posts. And until now, at least, we haven't been adding like an author credit or author box at the bottom of a new page on the website. I'm beginning to wonder if we should.
In your case, where it's your money or your life, consider it.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. Yeah.
I actually looked at that, and you know what the part of the problem is? That's very hard to add to a page. I believe most plugins only add them to posts.
Yeah, I actually could do that myself if I had to.
Oh, okay. So you could hack the.
I could hack it if I needed.
See, that's where the programming end of it actually comes in handy.
I believe it or not, actually the worst part about some new clients that come to me with existing websites that they're not willing to change. I mean, I feel like I'm doing archaeology every time I climb into those things. So, and I mean, I almost said you wouldn't believe, but I know you would actually. How many sites have like 90% of the coding for the site in the footer.php file
Oh,
or the header.php or whatever, you know. So, but okay, so the point is, and it's well taken, that I have absolutely been thinking about having an author credit somewhere on these pages that we're adding willy-nilly. We actually
Here's
identify authors in the database anyway. Of course,
yeah.
they're so.
Here's what I would suggest, because knowing your business, right?
Yeah.
I would suggest this, that you add an author's bio to the end of the page, like this page was written by so-and-so, include any accreditation they have in regards to the article, and then link to 2 places. LinkedIn, if they have an account there, because there's testimonials, etc., right? And to bio on a third party site that is different than the one you have.
or their own. I've seen, like, if they have their own page with their own accreditation, you can do that. It's a secondary source.
Because that's what Google, and it's not just having it in the page. From the research that I did looking at that Systrix, winners and losers, the ease to which people can figure out the expertise of the author is a key. In other words, you could see big differences in the way the sites went up or down based on just how easy it was to figure out the expertise in the page.
So this thank you. That, I mean, this is exactly where I've been going with my thinking about this. Related topics, and one good thing about using a database based product like WordPress is you can have that in one place, all that information in their user profile, and then suck it in with the right kind of query or with a plugin.
Right.
But so two new questions then arise from all this, I think. One is, so let's say that you have a like I've got a number of home health and hospice clients. They have potentially, a fair number of people that could be credited with authorship for the things that we're writing for them. And of course, that brings up all kinds of interesting new questions about, do they see this stuff and approve it? But I'm wondering, like in a hospice that may have, 6 or 20 medical directors and a director of nursing and all this, is it better to concentrate all of that in 1 or 2 of the doctors, say, and attribute authorship to a couple of them? Or all 20?
I think it also, what I would, to cut you off, sorry, Terry, is that I would say look at that stable or portfolio of people, evaluate who has the most trust in that authorship group, and then use them as your people.
Trust
ideally,
as by
like the same way that you would measure everything out, like as measured by, maybe they have their writings out on as many things as possible, and make them be, if they've been in other places, if they're accredited, if somebody has been on news and radio and TV and all that, there's your person. And maybe do a co-authorship, or like they author it and have an interview with the other person. That's what I would do, is structure it that way.
Yeah, and I would add to that, now, if you have several doctors, for instance, definitely, as long as they are, as Kevin says, accredited, they have some meat on their bones. More is better than few.
Yeah, I would name every university they went to, every accolade they ever got, any extra stuff they've done. Because here's why. In the past, when it came to your money or your life, Google basically said, if you've had the disease, you're still an expert. Well, here's what I found when I look at 2 sites in the Systrix thing. One was, they were both diabetes sites, right? And one had all doctors and all accreditation. And the other site was all people that had only had the disease.
There
And we're basing their advice on that. Guess which site went down 20%, which one went up 20?
Well, based on your lead in here, I'm guessing the patients one went up. Interesting.
Well, because I think they weigh that with the, you could pay a doctor or you could pay these people to be your authority, as opposed to these people who have experienced this, and it goes back to reviews. They weigh your own personal opinion.
Yeah, there's a psychological.
When you vocalize your opinion out there, you're taking on something.
Well,
yeah, there's a psychological aspect of that. What's more believable to somebody who suffers or has a family member who suffers from the disease? They're just almost naturally going to put a little bit more credence in what is said by somebody who is experiencing it than they are in somebody who has an axe to grind, is trying to build a reputation, or
or marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big plus to this whole new EAT focus is the fact that it's going to take a lot of the ability of paid contributors away from them. It's stealing credibility from, I should say stealing, it's denying them credibility that they might have gotten before for being paid contributors. If you don't have some creds to bolster your reputation, it's not going to be as easily as easily done to achieve any sort of credit with Google for this. And I think psychologically, it's getting harder and harder to fool your average user.
Yeah, the one diabetes site where it was people who had it rather than doctors and stuff, they were also making comments and writing about research that was being done. And I think that's where they really got nailed. Just this is what I don't really like about the Systrix, right? Instead of saying, oh, they went down 20%, well, they might have went up 50% somewhere else, but that one little section of a website took them all the way down. Because here's what you really have to understand now is I'm trying to think of the right words to use. Authority is slowly moving to the page level and getting less and less to be about the website authority and more about the authority at the page level. In other words, Forbes, in my opinion, in a few years, will not be able to make something rank just because a guy wrote it on Forbes. It'll depend on his expertise.
God, that would be
I think we'll get less really crappy articles about SEO in the New York Times, Forbes, and all those other places.
Yep.
Well, those are highly regarded sources of expertise on SEO.
Yeah, but not for SEO. If I want business information, I'll go to them.
Here's the joke sign I'm holding up right now.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody mentioned reviews a little while ago. That's one form of social proof. And then we're also talking a little bit about linking here. So do you think that it's fair to say that the individual authors may be better able to establish expertise and authoritativeness than trust? Because if trust is mostly measured by links and reviews, those are going to the site, not to the individual authors.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
So sites are and maybe pages are more likely to be manageable in terms of their trust, and maybe less so in terms of expertise and authoritativeness.
Well, I've always believed that authoritativeness spread across the whole website is not really a good way to do it. That we look at pages, not websites, so that it should be each page on the website has its own authority, right? And I think that's what they're slowly coming to. And, you know, for a long time, me and Dave were kind of looked at like we were, you know, idiots or something, because we were saying for a long time that one page can lower the quality score of a whole site.
Oh, sure.
Or, you know, one part of a site can drop the authority for the whole site. Nobody really thought that was happening, but we saw it way, way before anybody started talking about it. And we were lucky in that when Panda came out, we had interviews with guys from eHow, people who really got hit hard by it, and were kind of let in on how they fixed it. So that gave us a lot of insight into that kind of how it was shifting from website authority to page authority.
Yeah, I would think, or I would at least like to believe, that if a site, like if, for instance, if Forbes suddenly only allowed articles from very authoritative expert writers, I would think that that would eventually translate, there'd be some trickle down authority and trust to the domain for that. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think that it's a passing era of looking at a website as an entity. It's pages.
Right. You have to look at your single pages, and the sum of those pages is authority now. That's the way I think they're kind of going.
I agree. I think that the domain authority would still exist, but only when comparing it to other domains. That kind of like I think that the SERPs themselves are really comparing at the page level. So we will be ranking at the page level. If you are talking about how that's an extra characteristic of this site has many pages that are authoritative, so the site too is authoritative. But that
and Google has said before, it's been a while, but they have said that an outbound link to another site is going to be valued, you know, the potential value of that link is based upon the page from which it originates, not the domain.
Right. That's always been the case.
Yeah. So that all just kind of falls in place. It just doesn't make sense, particularly if you've got a domain that has all these different categories, and they're talking about home gardening here and child rearing there and car maintenance over here. How the hell can you possibly establish anything like authoritativeness?
You mean like the Huffington Post?
I don't think. I don't think you can establish authority that way. But I think the one tiny little thing that they could do is they give you the digital equivalent of benefit of the doubt. If like, okay, we'll consider it. Not that it gives you any authoritative, but instead of like you discount other sites links that come in for the same reason. From where it comes, you're like, oh, that's crap. The same way. Oh, it has this gets through the door. It's the first box checked.
Sorry to finish.
No, I was done. I don't really know where I was going. I had a thing.
Because I was going to say, and Penguin were kind of verifying that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's what
whether we should continue to give them a benefit.
I knew where you were going. I sort of saw you about to say it. I was like, wait, I'm answering my own question, but knew what I meant. But with the entity that when you had mentioned like what is an author and the like what are they? I look at the authors are now going to be the entities. Consider your authors or those are your entities within your other entities of the pages. So they all go together, and almost like you could have, I hate the term, but reputation management would be the SEO for that entity. And you build up that entity, and then that gets credibility wherever it goes. Because if your doctors leave you or leave your groups, their entity or their authority now EAT is confusing me, but in all of those factors go with them. So you can pick up and go like, I leave this agency, I go to another agency. I still have I'm still authoritative and I have credibility.
Yeah, you take it with you.
so that that's your entity into itself.
And I believe that I read or remember something in the Raiders guide that basically said put more stock in third-party bios than that person writing about themselves. In other words, they're trying to eliminate the self-proclaimed expert.
Well,
So
there's a number.
So what's his face? Nah, never mind. I'll just leave that.
Well, in a way, that's kind of the algorithmic equivalent of social proof with third-party reviews, if you think about it.
Well, and it also
that was
goes
something
back
I wanted to mention too. You have your money or your life pages, and that's what everyone's talking about. Yeah. But you know where I saw another section that was really affected? E-commerce sites that were using reviews.
Huh.
If you're doing internal reviews with no third party, you're wasting your time. In fact, it could hurt you.
Interesting. Yeah, well, those are basically first-party reviews then. And those have been suspect for a long time, I think. Looks at all this.
Okay, and when you're looking at review companies, here's some things to keep in mind. If they put right on the review that the person is being verified as a purchaser, that's a good thing. What else was it?
Well, Amazon.
What the source of the review is. One of the companies, there were two companies that they pointed out. One was called Revoo, REVOO. And I forget the second one, but the systems were unreal, very transparent, and it was right on the page where the review was. It wasn't where you're looking all over again. It was about how easy it was to see how transparent and how these reviews were collected, that sort of thing, right?
Right. The more forthcoming you are with tangible information, identifying marks is where you can look at it and go, this is a real review, as opposed to here's their name, this is what they purchased, this is when and how they got there. It's credibility. You're giving the review credibility to stand by itself.
Yeah, but you know what? I saw a lot of the ones that went down didn't even verify that the person had purchased the product. So what is the review based on?
Right. It's shit. It's basically you've created. I mean, reviews are modern day testimonials that you can either fake the testimonial or create the review. And the credibility that you get from a review standpoint is from somebody else. If somebody else gave you that review and you put it, or you obtained it somewhere independently of the doctor's office or the car dealership or the place that you're seeing.
Yeah, and one of the something else I noticed was that when I started doing some work on AdWords, they suggested using their review system on your checkout pages, because that would raise your the quality of your campaign by 8% by adding those. And it wasn't just them; they listed some other third-party companies as well. That shows me that they're kind of starting to put a little bit of stock in these. They're not like the reviews on Google My Business. They're looking for real stuff where people have actually purchased the product, etc.
I think they're actually going to transition those things into the Google My Business reviews more so. They'd rather have that, because if they can prove this, then they could turn around and go, oh, you purchased. Imagine you did like an e-commerce thing. If you could catch that transaction from a brick and mortar store and go, oh, guess what? In this, we're funneling that in. Like, yeah, we trust your review. You paid them money and you did these things. So
one other thing though is the thing with the Google reviews is they want some stupid amount of sales before you can hook it up. What I would look for is the ones that aggregate reviews and are okayed by Google, because there you got thousands of reviews for a product, and you can put that on your website and you're set.
Yep, and go to Google first and find, there's a link. You can see Google recommended companies instead of going to the company and finding out that Google recommends them.
And
you know what I
asking
mean?
them, yeah, that's
Yes.
kind of like asking the wolf, do you
I
want
know, but people will do that. Like, well, they put this
Oh, for
badge
sure.
on there that this is, I'm Google certified. I was Google certified 12 years ago. That doesn't mean dick now. Sorry. Oh, look, my phone is now, somebody said computer and Google on my phone chimed in. So. And by somebody, I mean me, because they can't hear you. Sorry.
Well, this has been interesting, very interesting. I think that this just points up the value of tools like these Hangouts and good or authoritative people that write in this field. I sure am not able to do the research, so I need good sources of information. So whether it's here, Doc's online newsletter or newspaper, and so forth. So, but don't believe everything you read.
Don't believe anything you read.
We're here. You don't have to take our word for
And
it.
only half of what you see, right?
Yeah.
So, but here's a great example of EAT. So if there's certain people, if you say it, I do believe it. Terry, if you wrote an article or you say something in here and make an assertion, I'll tend to believe it. For instance, not just Terry, but because you do have that authoritativeness, and so it's not just in SERPs that where it matters.
I don't like to abuse it, so I only write for money.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the heart of the thing, though, Tim. I mean, basically, authoritativeness and trust. These are perceptions, okay?
Oh yeah.
And generally, which has been tied to an awful lot of things when you talk about search optimization. If you're attending the user's perceptions, you're generally going to be also attending the search engine's perceptions. Whether it be in the quality of your writing or the authoritativeness of your author or a page or whatever, I think that the two go hand in hand. So 9 times out of 10, I can just think to myself, okay, if I present it this way, if I saw that from somebody else, what would be my response? Will I just snicker and walk away, or would I roll my eyes and delete? And that's generally been a pretty good metric. I can, provide some credibility. One of the things that, in fact, to be fair, almost the only thing that I ever saw of any benefit out of Google Plus was the fact that you could, on your profile page, you can list different places that you've published, and then you could use that G Plus link on a profile.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have 4 scrolled pages of shit that I've written listed there on my profile that I can link to that, and somebody can go see, and it's all themed stuff. It's all SEO and copywriting and marketing. So it's at least the human perception there would be benefited, and it helps accomplish what I always believed was the main goal on Google's part, was that this was not a social media platform. This was a data harvesting platform. So now they've managed to color in all the dots where they can connect Doc Sheldon to all of these different sites and all these different articles, whether I had a byline there or not.
It was your resume. It was your online CV.
Essentially, yeah. So it did, to a greater degree, something that I would not try to do, for instance, on my LinkedIn profile. I'm not going to list, 80 or 90 articles on there. But it did, and on top of that, again, from both and a reader's standpoint and from a search engine standpoint, if I'm talking about a given topic, let's say web development, and I've got 12 articles there on web development, then it not only lets the user go and click on any of those that sound like they might be of interest, it also lets the search engine see Doc has written about web development 12 different places. So maybe he deserves a little bit more authority in this particular, or be given credit for more expertise in this particular realm.
Yeah, I still list sites there. I think just because Google stopped the authorship program doesn't mean that they stopped looking at that and using it.
I think
the author
that
tag?
was just a jump start. That just let them get a whole bunch of people on the bandwagon so they could test their algorithms and train them and go out and harvest it themselves.
Well, I think they were actually looking at it as some sort of way to verify expertise. That's what I thought the goal of our authorship was originally. But now that I've learned a bit more about the IDs for structured data, I am going to look into using some of that stuff because I think that's authorship in the future.
You talk about the entity ID?
Yeah, entity IDs.
MREID or whatever.
Yep, MREID, yeah.
Yeah, I think that will be a good thing to have set up and then to start implementing it. Because once they have that entity in there, every article you write, when they see that link in the bio, they know it's a bio and they can hook it to your ID.
So far, I've tried to follow all the writings about that to figure out whether, for instance, I have one or what it is, and I haven't been able to get any of that stuff to apply. Have you? Have you figured out what your MREID is?
I know I don't have one.
Read one post about it, thought, okay, this could be good for authorship. Yeah. I spoke to Bill Slosky about it. He basically saw it. You were there. He basically saw a similar use for it. I believe Bill may be the guy at the next Bogus. Ask him, because I believe he may have actually started using it a little bit more. Okay. And with his exposure, he's going to see it a lot quicker than you are.
Yeah, I know. I checked. I do not have one yet. I haven't gotten so far as to explore the process of getting one. But
I don't know if
I agree. I think it's definitely, there's some future in that.
That's a really good point. Yep. That and getting your own page in Wikipedia, right? Hey, I got to roll, guys.
Yeah, okay. Let's close her down, Doc, since half the crew's going. No,
sorry. It's a timing thing.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, guys, and thanks everybody. The hordes of people that are watching.
Well, they'll all be back next week when Dave's not sick.
Well, hey, we talked about a real SEO topic or two this time. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, they'll be
and
back.
We stayed on point.
Yeah.
We stayed on point.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to close her down.